By the time the mashed potatoes reached my hands, I already knew something was wrong. It wasn't anything obvious, no shouting, no slammed doors. Just a pressure in the room, a quiet stiffness in the way my parents moved around the table in Franklin, like they were all trying not to look at me for too long. My mom passed the rolls without a word. My dad's jaw kept ticking like he was chewing on something that wasn't food. Madison smiled when I walked in, but it was the kind of smile you use with strangers, not with someone who once held you while you cried. I tried to pretend I didn't notice. That's what I trained myself to do around them. I asked about the house, about work, about the boutique. Every answer came trimmed and cold. Fine. Busy. Okay. Madison talked about her community. Supported. Shop like she'd pulled it out of thin air with grit and charm. I heard the lie, tasted it, but swallowed my correction like I'd swallowed 100 others. For a few minutes, dinner went through the motions. Forks scraped, glasses bumped. Madison made a backhanded comment about my hair looking very corporate now, as if corporate meant fake. Dad muttered something about me always being too busy in the city. Mom sighed when I offered to help fix a few things around the house. That sigh said more than words. We survived before you. We don't need you now. I'd grown up in this house. The walls used to hum with the smell of motor oil from Dad's work clothes and fabric softener from Mom's quilts. Money was always tight. I remember pretending to sleep while they whispered about overdue bills, the recession, the possibility of losing the house. Back then, I thought if I studied hard enough, if I became successful enough, I could save us all. And for a while I tried. I left Franklin for San Francisco on a scholarship, dragging my guilt into every job and every paycheck. I poured my energy into code and late nights. While my colleagues bought gadgets and vacations, I wired money back home, quietly without fanfare. I fixed the roof, helped with repairs, signed the loan for Madison's boutique, bought her the SUV she needed for inventory and markets. It always felt less like generosity and more like a responsibility I had signed up for at 12 years old, when I promised my little sister in the dark that we wouldn't lose the house, but something twisted along the way. Madison's gratitude dulled first. Her thank yous turned into jokes about my big city savior complex. Dad bristled every time I offered to pay for something. Mom's tone changed when I mentioned visiting, like I was an obligation she needed to coordinate around. I told myself I was imagining it, that they were proud and just didn't know how to say it, that this dinner would reset everything. Then Dad set his fork down. The sound was small, but in that quiet room it hit like a gavel. He looked straight at me, years of resentment sitting plain in his eyes. "We don't need your money, Kimberly." My brain stuttered. I waited for him to soften it, to say he meant it as reassurance, not rejection. Instead, my mother stepped right into the pause, or you. The words were smooth, practiced, like she'd been waiting for the perfect opening to deliver them. For a second, I honestly thought I misheard. The air thinned. My heart pounded so loudly I could barely hear my own thoughts. I looked at Madison, the girl who used to crawl into my bed when the shouting got too loud, who'd begged me to help her start her dream boutique. She crossed her arms and nodded. "She's right," she said. "Nobody needs your money or you." Nobody contradicted her. Nobody winced. Nobody said, "Hey, that's too far." My family, the people I had quietly carried for years, sat there and watched me crumble in real time, and chose silence. That was the moment something inside me finally snapped, not in rage, but in realization. They weren't just pushing me away. They were telling me I had never really belonged, that my value began and ended with what I could pay for. I didn't argue, I didn't cry. I simply felt something close, deep inside my chest, like a door I should have locked a long time ago. I stood up. I don't remember my chair scraping back. I don't remember what I did with my napkin. One second I was at the table, and the next I was on the front porch, sucking in the cold Tennessee air like it might erase their voices. No one followed, not my mother, not my father, not my little sister, whose dream I had helped build from the ground up. For years, I had been their emergency fund, their fixer, their quiet solution. And the first time I needed them to see me instead of what I could do for them, they stayed seated. That was the last night I let my silence be mistaken for surrender. The hotel room felt like a stranger's life. Too clean, too quiet, no cluttered dining table, no strained small talk. Just a neatly made bed, a humming heater, and me sitting on the edge of the mattress replaying my family's words in a loop. Nobody needs your money or you. I pressed my palms against my eyes until I saw bright bursts of color. No tears came. Somewhere between the porch and this bed, the crying part of me had burned out. What was left wasn't numb exactly. It was, focused, my phone buzzed, Elena Cook, one of the few people from Franklin who had never treated me like a walking credit card. She didn't call often, and she definitely didn't call late without a reason. I answered, "Hey." Her voice came in rushed and careful. "Kim, did something happen tonight?" My stomach dropped. "Why?" "You need to check Madison's Instagram, right now." I opened the app with fingers that suddenly felt too big. Madison's feed popped up, a grid of bright photos and curated smiles. There she was, standing in her boutique, thread and willow, bathed in soft light and compliments, built this empire from nothing, self-made and proud. The caption read. Post after post told the same story, Madison the scrappy small town success story, Madison the girl who never took a handout, Madison the woman Franklin rallied behind, celebrating her hustle, her drive, her independence. No mention of the monthly payments I'd made, no mention of the loan I'd co-signed, no mention of the SUV title that still had my name on it. Elena, my voice felt flat. How long has it been like this? That's not even the worst part, she said. Scroll the comments. Under one post, someone had written, "So inspiring how you did this all on your own. No rich parents, no help, just you." Madison's friend Erica replied, "She's never taken a handout in her life. That's why she deserves everything she has." People in Franklin believed every word. It wasn't just that my help was invisible. I had been completely erased from the story, like my years of sacrifices were an inconvenience to the version of herself she wanted to sell. Something inside me shifted. The hurt was still there, but it hardened into something clean and sharp. For years, I had told myself that love meant staying quiet, that it meant giving and never asking for credit. That if I just kept helping, eventually they would see me. Now I understood, they had seen me. Just not as a sister or daughter, as a resource. I set my phone down and pulled my laptop onto my knees. I didn't open Netflix or email or any distraction. Instead, I pulled up my financial files, transfers, contracts, loan agreements. Years of quiet wiring, and it's no big deal, I'll cover it. Laid out in cold lines and digital signatures. The SUV purchase. The boutique's business loan. The payments I had made without being asked twice, because Madison's voice cracking on the phone had been enough. My fingers trembled at first, but it wasn't from sadness anymore. It was from certainty. If they truly believed they didn't need my money, then it was time to let that belief be tested. For the first time in my life, I let myself think a thought I'd always shoved away. What if I just stopped? What if I stopped carrying the weight they pretended not to notice? What if I set it down and stepped back and let them experience the life they claimed they'd built on their own? The idea didn't feel cruel. It felt honest. I zoomed in on the SUV paperwork. My name was right there on the title, clear and legal. I remembered Madison's face when I'd handed her the keys, eyes shining, voice cracking with, "Are you serious?" I had been so sure that day that I was doing the right thing. Helping her become who she wanted to be. Now I saw it differently. I had given her a platform, and she'd pushed me off it the second people started clapping. I opened a blank document and started listing steps. Not revenge, not schemes. Just boundaries. Address the SUV, address the boutique loan, stop paying for silence. By the time I finished typing, the shaking in my hands had stopped. My breathing was steady. The girl who used to stay up all night solving coding puzzles had finally turned that same precision onto her own life. For years, I had been terrified that if I pulled back, everything would fall apart, that they'd hate me, that I'd be the villain. Tonight, at that dinner table, they had proven they didn't need me, so I decided to believe them. And that decision, that was the moment my silence stopped being weakness, and became my strategy. I didn't sleep much that night, but not because I was spiraling. For the first time in years, my mind wasn't looping through what more can I do. It was asking a different question: what happens if I stop? By the time the pale orange of sunrise washed across the hotel curtains, I had a plan. I didn't drive back to my parents' house. There was nothing left there for me but more blame and more rewriting of history. Instead, I sat at the small desk in the corner of the room, opened my laptop, and took a calm breath. Step 1. The SUV. Madison's black SUV wasn't just a car. It was a prop in her self-made story, a symbol she posed within photos of hustle and success. But legally, it was still mine. I pulled up the dealership's information and hit call. "Hi," I said when a manager answered. My voice surprised me. It was steady. "I need to initiate a repossession on a vehicle." He asked for the make, model, and VIN. I read them off. He asked who I was in relation to the vehicle. "I'm the titled owner," I replied. There was a pause. "Do you want to give the current driver any notice?" I thought of Madison's words at dinner. "Nobody needs your money or you." "No," I said softly. "Just retrieve it today." I emailed the documents they requested and hung up. No rush of vengeance came. No twisted joy. Just a quiet sense of relief, like finally setting down a heavy box I'd carried too far. Step 2. The boutique loan. Thread and Willow existed because, years ago, my sister had called me sobbing, terrified her dream would die before it started. I had dropped everything, run the numbers, and said yes to a loan that could have dragged me under if it went bad. I told myself it was worth it because family didn't let family's dreams die. Family, I was slowly learning, also doesn't pretend the person who helped them doesn't exist. I drafted an email to the bank, effective immediately. "I will no longer be making payments on the shared loan for Thread and Willow. Please direct all future notices and obligations to the primary borrower on the account." I reread it twice. It was simple, clean, factual, no anger, no apology. Then I hit send. Consequences aren't cruel. Lying about how you got where you are, and using someone until they break is cruel. Boundaries are just overdue truth. Less than half an hour later, my phone rang. The dealership. "We've picked up the vehicle." The manager said, "You'll receive confirmation paperwork by email." "Thank you," I replied. Just like that, one piece of Madison's carefully curated image vanished. The SUV she paraded around town as proof of her success was gone. Not stolen, not sabotage, returned to its rightful owner. A knock sounded at my door. I opened it to find Alina, eyes wide, cheeks flushed with the particular energy of small town news moving faster than the weather. "Kim, people are talking," she said, slipping inside. "The SUV just got taken out of Madison's driveway, and the bank called about missed payments. She's posting these cryptic stories and deleting comments like crazy." I sat back on the bed. "Already?" Elena nodded. "Franklin's chewing on it like fresh gossip. Your cousin sent me screenshots from the community page. People are asking if she really bought the car herself, if the boutique's in trouble. They're comparing her self-made posts with what they're hearing now. It's messy." I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. "Are you okay?" she asked quietly. I thought about it, really thought about it. "I'm done being her safety net," I said. If her world cracks because I step away, it means she built it on a lie. Elena's shoulders dropped with something like relief. "Good," she whispered. "It's about time someone stopped letting her get away with this." By late afternoon, Franklin was buzzing, screenshots, rumors. Soft, polite disbelief turning into hard questions. People who had praised Madison's independence were now asking each other, if she did it all on her own, why is the bank calling? Why is the SUV gone? Then came the text from my cousin Daniel. "You might want to know. Madison's at the boutique crying. Scott's yelling. People are watching. I didn't go to gloat. I didn't want a front row seat to her breakdown. But I did want closure, and closure rarely shows up at your door. Sometimes you have to walk into the room where everything is breaking and stand there on purpose." Thread and Willow looked smaller when I pulled up. The sign seemed duller, the windows less bright. Inside, Madison and her husband Scott were mid-argument, their voices low and fierce. "You told everyone you did this alone," Scott hissed. "Why didn't you tell me about the loan, about the SUV, about her?" Madison's mascara streaked down her face. "I didn't think she'd actually take them back," she choked out. Scott's mouth twisted. "You let the whole town believe a lie." Then he saw me, his anger flickered into something like shame. Madison turned, and the look she gave me was pure accusation. "You did this," she spat, pointing at me like I'd broken into her shop with a crowbar. "You ruined my life." I stepped closer, not looming, not shrinking. Just there. "No," I said quietly. "I stopped funding it." Madison stared at me like I'd set her boutique on fire. "You're jealous," she threw out, the word wobbling. "You always hated that people loved my store. You could never stand that I had something that was mine." I almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because of how small that lie sounded compared to the truth. "Jealous," I repeated. "Madison, I loved you enough to help you build every part of this. I gave you the car, I co-signed the loan, I wired money when you called me crying. I wasn't jealous, I was invested." Her face crumpled, but I didn't look away. "You loved the applause," I continued, my voice steady. "You loved people calling you self-made. You loved the stories about how you did it with no help. You loved that so much, you erased the person who stood behind you for years." Silence fell heavy between us. Scott looked from her to me, realization settling in layer by layer. "You used her," he said to Madison, his tone flat. "You let everyone believe you did this alone while she paid the price if anything went wrong." Madison's shoulders sagged. She sank to the floor, burying her face in her hands. "Why couldn't you just keep helping?" she sobbed. "Why did you have to take everything away?" I knelt, not to comfort her, but so she'd have to hear every word clearly. "Because you told me nobody needed me," I said, "and that night I finally believed you." Her crying hitched. Scott didn't rush to her side. He didn't yell at me. He just stood there, seeing his wife fully for the first time without the filter of her self-made story. I stood, brushed imaginary dust from my coat, and headed for the door. At the threshold, I paused and gave Madison the one lesson no one in our family had ever bothered to teach. "Actions have consequences," I said quietly. "Even the silent ones." Outside, the cold air hit my face, but it didn't sting this time. It cleared my head. As I walked back to my car, the world felt lighter. Thread and Willow stood behind me like a symbol, not of my failure as a sister, but of the exact moment I stopped paying for my own erasure. Franklin reacted the way small towns always do. The gossip spread fast over coffee, in grocery aisles, in parking lots. People who'd praised Madison's independence now whispered about the loan, the SUV, the lies. None of them had the full story, but they had enough pieces to start rearranging their opinions. Scott moved out for a while, according to Elena. "He says he needs space," she told me over the phone. "He's trying to figure out what was real and what was performance." My parents called twice. The first voicemail was angry. How dare I embarrass the family? What had gotten into me? Why was I punishing my sister? This second was frantic. Please to fix this. To talk some sense into Madison. To stop all this drama. I didn't call back. Not because I wanted to hurt them, but because for once I was choosing not to rush in and save them from the fallout of their own decisions. They had sat at that table and watched my heart crack open, and did nothing. I was done doing everything for people who wouldn't lift a finger for me. When it was time to fly back to San Francisco, I packed my bag with calm hands. No shaking, no racing heart, no last. It urged to drive by the house just one more time. I got on the plane, buckled my seatbelt, and didn't look out the window as Franklin shrank beneath the clouds. San Francisco greeted me with its usual noise, traffic sirens, snippets of conversation from strangers, but it felt different this time, less like an escape, more like home. My apartment, once something I felt guilty for enjoying, suddenly felt earned. I opened the windows, brewed tea, let the city air drift in. There was no urgent text from Madison, no missed calls from my mother demanding help, no quiet panic buzzing in the back of my brain about someone else's bill or emergency. Just stillness. In that stillness, I realized something simple and radical. I didn't owe anyone my exhaustion. I threw myself back into work, not as an escape, but as something I genuinely loved. I poured energy into friendships with people who chose me for more than what I could give. People who asked how I was and actually waited for an answer. The guilt that had followed me since I was 12. The guilt of leaving, of succeeding, of not being physically present in Franklin, started to fade. Not overnight, not all at once, but slowly, steadily, like a bruise that stops hurting when you bump it. I stopped checking Madison's social media. I stopped waiting for my parents to suddenly become the parents I needed. I let them be who they were, and I let myself step out of the role I've been forced into, the fixer, the wallet, the quiet sacrificial lamb. Boundaries, I learned, aren't walls meant to shut everyone out. They're doors, doors you can close when someone keeps walking into your life with muddy feet, doors you can lock when people confuse your kindness for obligation. If you've ever been the unseen backbone of your family, the one who sends money, fixes messes, absorbs blows, all while they act like it's nothing, or worse, like you're selfish when you finally say no, hear me, your worth is not measured by how much you suffer for other people. You are allowed to stop paying for your own erasure. You are allowed to step back and let people feel the weight of their choices. You are allowed to choose yourself and still be a good person. I didn't burn bridges. I just stopped rebuilding them when someone else set them on fire, and for the first time in my life, that decision felt less like loss and more like freedom.